Our podcast today is sponsored by Midas Healthcare Solutions. They are elevating technology to help prevent medication diversion. Key features include real-time visual proof of compliant medication disposal, powered by machine learning and AI to detect drug wasting behaviors. Seamless integration with your ADC, EMR, and diversion software for efficient reconciliation of waste transactions, including identifying outliers. Anytime witness technology, providing flexibility when a witness is required for unused controlled substance disposal. And Rx Intercept for customizable, random, or targeted sample collection with secure chain of custody. Welcome back, everybody, to Drug Diversion Insights. My guests today are Kristin Waite-Labott and Jenny Klug. Kristin is the founder and president for Wisconsin Peer Alliances for Nurses, also known as WisPAN, and a returning guest. So if you have not heard the two previous podcast episodes with Kristin, I would really encourage you to give those a listen. One is titled How One Nurse's Struggles Can Work Toward Destigmatizing Substance Abuse, and the other is the story of a substance abuse and successful recovery. It's a very powerful story, which Kristin may share a little bit about later on in the podcast. Jennifer is the vice president and director of social media for WisPAN. And she too has a journey, and we'll hear more about that in a bit. But I want to start with WisPAN. That's why we're here today, is to talk about that. So Kristin, why don't you start by running us through that organization and its focus?
Sure. Would it be all right if I started with my story a little?
Because sure, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. I won't go into too much because I don't want to spoil it for people who want to listen to the other two podcasts.
But there you go.
So I have been a nurse for 34 years now. Whenever I say that, I'm like, I can't even believe it's been 34
years. I hear you.
Crazy. But I've been in recovery for 20 of those years. This January was my 20th recovery birthday. I published a book in 2015 about my story, just kind of sharing a bit about, things that happened to me. And I was hoping that by sharing that story, other nurses might find connection, might feel a little bit of hope if they were going through something similar. And it has certainly done that for sure. I think we so desperately need to start talking about substance use and mental health in nursing, in healthcare generally, but because I'm a nurse, that's my focus. And to decrease that stigma that keeps people from reaching out for help and saying, I can't do this alone. I need support. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's really hard to do that. The fear that people are going to know, that professionally it will affect them. They may lose their license. They may lose their job. The fear of that is so strong that it really prevents people from being able to raise their hand and say, hey, I need something. I lost almost everything. Back in 2004, I was discovered diverting fentanyl from the hospital I was working for. I lost my job, my nursing license, and spent about 4 months incarcerated. I thought my nursing career was over after that. I sure never thought I'd be able to practice again. But in Wisconsin, we have a monitoring program. And in 2007, I learned about it and thought, wow, I can be a nurse again. That's amazing. I was elated. I joined the program. It's a 5-year program here. It's intense. There, of course, are restrictions on the nursing license. There are, lots of monitoring and hoops you have to jump through. It's stressful and a lot of it overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But again, really grateful that I could be a nurse again. And so I joined that program and made it through and got my full licensure back. I, work in an emergency department again, which I absolutely love. But it was hard. Like the program was overwhelming. I have anxiety, which did not go away after I stopped using substances. In fact, it got worse until I was able to learn some tools and how to manage that. It was an overwhelming process. I go to 12-step meetings and have since very early in my recovery, and they're wonderful. I still go to them today and really were the basis and the foundation for my recovery. But they didn't address the nursey side of things. Like, how do I get my nursing license back? What is this monitoring program? And how in the world do I get through such a thing? How do I get back to nursing? How do I have a job interview with all of this in my history? How do I talk to people about it? Those kind of things were, there was no support for that kind of a discussion. And I learned in some of the work I do these days that there are other states that have awesome peer support programs for nurses going through such things. And so I met with them and decided, boy, we really need something like that in Wisconsin. And so that is where WisPAN comes in. We created it and launched it in 2021 to be that peer support for nurses going through substance use issues, whether or not they've been caught in any, circumstance, and be monitoring, even just if they have substance use issues and want to get some support. It has been incredibly rewarding. So we offer that peer support. And then last year, we added peer support for nurse mental wellness, because nurses are struggling with a lot of things, not just substance use. Yeah. And we thought it would be great if nurses just had a place where they could come and get support for whatever issues they're facing. So we added that peer support for nurse mental wellness last year. And then we do education, as if you've heard my story before, you probably attended some sort of educational event I spoke at. So we think it's super important to share our stories, share our hope, share recovery, and resources. That is so important that people know where they can go.
Yeah, I think that's great. And it's nice for nurses, to healthcare professionals in general, but certainly nurses that are on those front lines and go through so much every day with patients, to be able to share with each other. Like you said, even just the mental health piece of it, even just talking out, how was your day, right? And I've had other guests on the show before that talk about that, de-stressing and how to handle it. And not everybody understands what you have gone through during your day when you need to talk about it. You go home and you talk to your non-healthcare professional husband who, he'll listen, sort of, maybe, but they just don't get it, right? And so that's an important role for somebody to have with the healthcare professional after they come home from their day, so that they can share the good, the bad, the ugly, the gory, the bloody, whatever it is that they need to share. So I think it's a fantastic resource. Now, you have recently announced that you're starting a podcast. So what is the motivation for starting that?
Yeah, it kind of stems from the whole story sharing idea that started with my book. Recently, I was asked to be a guest on a podcast. It's called the Recovery Sisterhood Podcast. And Artie Reed is the person who is, that's her podcast. And I was a guest there as just a woman in recovery. She has guests on her podcast. They're all women who have been through substance use, and are in recovery. And I just occurred to me, wow, what if we could give nurses a space where they could share their stories? When I was a guest on her podcast, it just felt very natural. And listening to some of the other stories on her podcast was very impactful. It just was really, it's a great podcast. But I really wanted to highlight the stories of nurses, give them a place where they could come, leave the stigma at the door, come on in, and let's just have a conversation about your story, what you've been through. And that's the idea, is just to share, let nurses have a space to share their stories, whether they want to be anonymous or not, and talk about what they went through, how they got through it, and share the resources or the things that help them, get back to a state of well-being, if you will.
Right. Yeah. How many of your guests, you're working toward destigmatizing and having a place out there. How many of them are indicating that they want to be anonymous versus willing to give their name?
I would say, because we have 6 folks lined up now, about 75% are wanting to be not anonymous, wanting to, show their
Are
face.
willing to,
Willing to do that.
Yeah.
And the others are thinking about it. Like nobody has said, oh, absolutely not, but thinking about it. It's a very vulnerable place to be, understandably, to share on such a deep level.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Is this going to be all states or only open to Wisconsin nurses?
All states. We're even hopefully going to go outside of the U.S. and invite nurses from all over to share their stories. Certainly
Excellent.
Nurses in the U.S. aren't the only nurses that are struggling right now.
Right.
It's a difficult profession, even on the best day.
It is. Yeah. And we have to remember, I mean, healthcare professionals, just because we're healthcare professionals and we have some medical training doesn't mean that we're not vulnerable to mental health issues, right? I mean, like you said, your anxiety and others have depression. And I mean, we're just humans, we're people. So those struggles are there as well. All right, Jen. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add too, I think it really helps, like you had said, reducing that stigma. And I think the old school of thought with nursing is like you push through. Like a great nurse doesn't take a bathroom break, doesn't eat, doesn't take care of themselves. And that's in the past, that is what is looked at as a great nurse and a strong nurse. And I think it's important that we do need to take care of ourselves. We do need to take 5 minutes off the floor to use the bathroom and take care of ourselves and eat something. Because if we're not taking care of our patients appropriately either. So I think just changing that viewpoint a little bit from, of course, putting ourselves last and making sure everything else is done, that we also take care of ourselves.
Right. Yeah. I think about that every time. This is just a little aside. So with all of the diversion software that's out there, there's a product that looks at time clocks, right? So when I'm auditing a nurse, if I see a time clock alert, that means they dispensed or administered something while not on the clock. Every single one I have seen has been during the lunch break. You can tell. I mean, it's that 30-minute lunch break. And so I think about that every time because, of course, I highlight that on the audit. And I am, 99.9%, they're not diverting on their lunch break. It's that they're not taking a lunch break, but they had to clock out for their lunch break, right? And so I always wonder, like, what does this look like on the back end when the nurse manager sees it? Are they aware, maybe, that this is happening? Does it help the frontline nurse to say, sorry, can't work. Look, I'm getting in trouble for it, right? So maybe we're doing a little bit for those lunch breaks when it comes to that by just pointing that out, that, they're not taking their break. So it's important. Yeah. All right, Jenny, please share your story with us and how you got involved with WisPAN.
Yeah, definitely. So I have struggled with alcohol basically since my teenage years. Kind of short story. My parents had me at a very young age, and they were teenagers. My grandmother raised me. So I always just had that feeling of like abandonment and not being good enough. So in high school, I was really, pushing to fit in and be in the cool crowd. And of course, drinking came along with that. So went through high school and college and did the binge drinking thing. Definitely always took it to the extreme. Blackout drinking pretty much every time I drank, or I would go into it thinking I was going to have a fun night but never know what was going to end up happening. But I went, finished college, did everything you're supposed to do, so I don't have a problem. And then my husband and I got married and had my son, and I went through some infertility issues, and we weren't able to we had our son, and then after him, we weren't able to have any more children. And that really was like a turning point for me. Definitely depression set in, and I turned toward my coping mechanism, alcohol. I used it to numb my feelings, to I thought I was processing what I was going through, but I was just numbing it and pushing it down. And so over the past, I'd say 10-ish years, I struggled in and out with, I want to stop drinking. I would stop for a while. Then I would pick up and drink worse than I had the last time. And it really started affecting my life. I have been a nurse for 6 years. This is my second career. So I thought, I'm going to go to school and become a nurse and that'll fix everything. I'm always looking at all the outside stuff, like what else can fix it besides working on myself and not drinking and learning new coping mechanisms. So I went to nursing school, graduated, and I was working. And the night before, I went out and didn't go out, I stayed at home, but I drank way too much, way into the wee hours, went into work, and my supervisor thought I was acting weird. So I ended up testing positive for alcohol, and I obviously was terminated, and I was put into the monitoring program in 2021, the Wisconsin monitoring program. And I just thought like my life was over. And I was watching the news one night, and I saw Kristin's news story, and it was a nurse, I think it was drug addicted nurse, something along those lines. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I watched it, and it was about a peer support program for nurses in my exact situation. And it was just like one of those God moments, I'm like, whoa, this is really weird. I'm watching this, I'm going through this. So I reached out to Kristin back in, it was May of 2022, and joined WisPAN and started attending the meetings Tuesdays and Thursdays, and just really got a good support network behind me with nurses. And it's just been so helpful to know that I am not alone, that I'm not a failure, that this happened, but I can become something with it. And so I've been using my support system through that. So back a year and a half ago now, I've been sober for just over 18 months.
Nice.
I relapsed. I was not using my coping tools, and I got a DUI. So I ended up spending 3 months in jail, 6 months on a scram bracelet, and again, thought my life was over. But back this time, I knew what I would do in the past was get sober, get my life back together, get a job, get going, get everything perfect, and then kind of put myself and my program on the back burner. Like, life is good. Life's going good. I'm going to do life. I'm going to forget about my program because I'm sober and everything's great. Well, that doesn't work very well. I mean, like any disease, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to continue to go to meetings and continue to work on my sobriety. So I've been doing that. I've been working with WisPAN, going to meetings. I have a sponsor. So life is fantastic. And I never thought I would get here and feel that and like be sober and enjoy my life. It's just the promises that they talk about in our meetings they all come true as long as you focus on sobriety and yourself. And I am a nurse. I'm a behavioral health nurse. And I really love it. I get to work with people that I can empathize with and, really feel like I know what you're going through. And it's just very rewarding to be able to help other people dealing with mental health and addiction.
Right. Was behavioral health always your area of focus, or?
So it's kind of interesting. Like when I went to school, that was what I wanted to do. But I started as a CNA, and then I got an externship all at the same organization. And then I went to a med surg floor. So it was always in the back of my mind. And I'd see positions and be like, okay, I need to do that because this is what I want. This is why I went into nursing. But my flow just did not fall into that. So no, I was not in the past. I was a med surg nurse. On the floor during COVID. It was a COVID unit. It was very stressful. And that was like right out of school. So that was very wow, what did I get myself into here? But great experience. And when I was looking to get back into nursing, I wanted to go back into get into behavioral health. So this time I was like, I am doing this.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot to unpack really in that story. First, the two of you share very similar stories with alcohol kind of starting, what the issues were, and very clear what your trauma was, right? Jenny, we talk about that there's some sort of trauma. So very clear on that. But what also really struck me is when you said that you came to work and you were still impaired, and you said, I think your word was, obviously I was fired, or obviously I was terminated, or something along those lines, which is also interesting because it's the culture that we're trying to get past, to where institutions take a different approach. That doesn't mean there aren't consequences and people aren't held accountable, but to hopefully allow their employees to get the help that they need, right? Rather than just, okay, we're done with you and off you go, and adding to that whole stress of the moment. And again, not without consequences or accountability, but more coming alongside on the healing process. And then also too, you're a great example of, we talk about and we focus on diversion in the healthcare setting and, being impaired from that perspective, but you weren't. Alcohol was what your weak point was, and it had nothing to do with diversion. And so it's just a reminder that the same principles apply if we have an impaired healthcare provider that's not diverting. They need help for that. And really what I loved most of all is, Kristin, your vision for WisPAN. I'm sure you have many stories like Jenny's, but here's a live story. It was you and WisPAN that brought her to that realization that things can get better. And, nobody's story is a beautiful one until they get to that end, right? Of where, wow, I have my life back, and how wonderful is this? So I think it is great, the work that you're doing, and to share that, because you both went through a lot, including incarceration. And not everybody goes through that. So you really went through quite the journey to get where you are.
Yeah, I love that Jenny is willing to share her story, and especially that part of it, because of course that means so much to me, just to know that, like, to have that confirmation that this is helpful, is really, and just to see you, Jenny, and how you've grown from that first time that we connected to today. Jenny is just incredible, which is why I wanted her as a partner in this podcast, because she's incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. And I feel like this has, in the past, I was so much guilt and shame, and hide it, and, put up that front, like the husband, the kids, the house, everything's perfect. It's perfect. And inside, all that turmoil is just, but I was embarrassed and ashamed. And I feel like Kristin has really helped me get past that. And this is me. This is a part of me and my journey, but it isn't all of me, and it doesn't define who I am. And I think my journey has made me a better person. And I'm just really hoping to help other people that are, stuck in that shame and embarrassment and hiding, and just be comfortable. Not everyone's going to like me, and that's okay. And, but the people that I love and that are important to me do. And that's what matters most.
Right. Yeah. That's the beginning of that whole healing process, and recognizing that your story can help other people. And I think, I wish we could get to the point where, and I don't know, I mean, is it that you think you can heal yourself, or you deny and you don't need help? But I think if we could get to the point where people have enough knowledge and destigmatize it to realize I am heading in the wrong direction. Nothing has happened yet. I haven't gotten the DUI. I haven't been impaired at work. My marriage is still intact, but these are the patterns that I'm seeing, or I really love the feel of that Percocet, right? So that's the time to then say, you know what, I think I need help before it gets there. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on it. Not being on that side, it's easy for me to say, well, just, do something about it before you get there. But I know the brain is just all kind of messed up. But it would be nice if we got to that point, that drink, that medication, you feel that, oh, this feels nice. That's when eventually you're going to have a problem.
Yeah. And I think for me, what has impacted me is people sharing their stories and being honest. I mean, I can remember when I was first starting my sobriety journey and sitting in a outpatient program and somebody else saying yet. And I'm like, that's not me. Like, I don't have a DUI. I have a husband. I have a college degree. That's not me. I'm not that bad. But like you said, it doesn't have to get that bad. And I did, but I think everyone has, as they say, different bottoms. So people do not need to have all the consequences that I've had in order to get sober. And there are a lot of people that are sober that haven't went through those consequences. But there are a lot that have. So I agree. I think just sharing our stories, and for me, listening to other people's stories have really impacted me and helped me with my sobriety.
Yeah. And to hear that when you finally take ownership for it and then do something about it, that's not the end of your life. As hard as it will be after that point, it is the beginning of getting your life back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even better.
Yes.
I mean, my life is infinitely better than it was 20 years ago. Yeah. I can't even count the ways it's better. It's all around better.
Good
and
point.
To your point, Terry, I think, at least I can really only speak about myself, but I'm very independent. I'm stubborn. And so in the early days, I didn't want to admit I had a problem. I didn't want to admit I was drinking too much. But I think if people just hear this, like if people hear my story and Jenny's story and the stories of nurses that got help before it got that bad, that they may be inclined to get help sooner. If I had, even in college, gotten help for the anxiety and depression I was going through, maybe it would never have ended up where it did. So I think, again, having a place where we can share stories so that people know they're not alone, that they're not the only ones struggling, can be really powerful. Knowing what resources there are, knowing like our WisPAN nurse mental wellness peer support. I'm hopeful that other states will start something similar for their nurses. I mean, there are tons of facilities that have internal peer support for well-being for their staff. I'm hopeful that states will start that, like external programs too. Yeah. Not everyone wants to go to an internal peer support program. It feels a little unsafe sometimes to share deeply at work. Externally, sometimes it's a little easier. But just knowing that there is a place where people can go, knowing the resources is really important.
Yeah. And moving away from that reactive society thought process and being proactive. Like, let's be proactive. Let's spread the word. Let's get out there. Let's not have people feeling like that's their last choice and then they're reacting on it. Like, I mean, obviously we're there for that too, but I'd love for people to, right, if that seed is planted, maybe I do need help. Maybe I don't. And they come to one meeting and then, but yeah, just being proactive with mental health and addiction.
Yeah. And the mental health goes so hand in hand with addiction, right? And maybe if it's not, I'm not going to admit that I have a substance use disorder, but I will admit that I spend a lot of my time anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And so, oh, wait, you mean that's not normal? I can make that better. It's not just because I have, I work in the ICU and it's stress. I mean, there's ways to manage that. So coming in that door and doing something, like you said, Kristin, if you had learned how to take care of that earlier, maybe you wouldn't have ended up, where you ended up. And so I think that's great to combine those together. They go hand in hand. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Any final words that you want to do a shout out for anything for WisPAN or anybody out there?
Well, as far as our podcasts go, I just really encourage people to listen and connect with us, listen to the stories and share them so that they reach the people that need to hear them, that need that hope, that need to hear, I'm struggling. Oh, look, they've struggled too and they got through it. This is how. Maybe I can too.
Yeah. What's the name of your podcast?
It's called Healing Tapestry, the Collective Stories of Nurses.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you both. I want to thank you both for your willingness to share and be vulnerable. It does make a difference. And people hear the story and they decide they want to get help for themselves. So I appreciate you sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Terry.
A special thanks to our sponsor, Midas Healthcare Solutions. If you are attending IHFDA September 29th and 30th, be sure to stop by their exhibit to discover their innovative technology. Midas offers solutions for med-surg areas, procedural suites, and pharmacies. Visit www.midashs.com to schedule a demo and learn more about their technology.